Okay, you can go. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me all right? Yes. Okay. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Stephanie Cristello. I'm a curator, author, and writer based out of Chicago, and I'm thrilled to be here for Chart, and most of all with Mama Andersson and Tal R for this conversation today. Thank you all so much for coming. So I wanted to start with basically opening up for the audience to talk a little bit about your past collaborations and how you've worked together in the past. We have a lot to cover today in the talk, but just to give everybody a sense of the structure, we'll talk about their past collaborations and exhibitions since 2016 with the exhibition Swan Song that happened at Magnus Carlsen Gallery and Gallery Bo Bjerregaard here in Copenhagen and also in Stockholm. And then from there, we're going to talk about the various themes that connect Karen Mama and Tal's practice, and also an announcement of their future collaboration that will take place. We'll get to all of the details and go from there. So yeah, I think just to start, maybe you can talk about how you've collaborated in the past, when it started, how it started.
Okay. I think we have two different galleries. We work with Bo Bjerregaard here in Copenhagen, and I work with Magnus Carlsen in Stockholm. And we both have other galleries, and it's nothing you jump from one gallery to another. And I'm sure that Bo really wanted to show something of me, and Magnus really wanted to show something of Tal.
Yeah.
And then we understood it was a sort of compromise to do something together, because we like each other's work. And we didn't know each other so much in that time, but we started sending some inspired materials to each other, and we talked about things we was not allowed to work with. Scary things, pathetic things, and but we want to do that, like skeletons and swans and romantic things.
Wow, to get used to my voice like this. I think it's important to say artwork doesn't start with colors on a canvas. It starts with what is popular called a motive. And I think what we did is we asked each other, do we have any motives in common? Kirkeby, the artist who passed away some years ago, said, motive is like, you need to have a motive, like a motive for killing. So what we were looking for, can we kill somebody together? And we started looking at images, and we found out there were certain images that we could relate to. As Karin said, skeleton, that's a very banal thing. We all have them inside. Everybody sitting here is a skeleton, sooner or later. And then there were these stupid swans.
Yes.
Why swans? Can you remember?
In a swanery, yeah. And you sent me a lot of pictures of the swans from one of the lakes here in Copenhagen, that people can rent them and riding around. And I find some pictures about depressing people who was close to die, and then it's starting. We never write anything. It was just pictures we sent to each other.
Yeah.
So pictures of death and romance.
Yeah, but it also grew a little bit to other direction. But I don't think I had any idea in the beginning how it should be, because we had first very dramatic ideas to make it serious and different things, and then we say, no, we just work with things who are really important for us.
Yeah.
And but in the end, I will say it was a very important exhibition for me, and I think for you too, because it's very unusual when you have been an artist for many years and you have worked alone. It's very nice to have somebody else to talk with. I mean, I live together with another artist and we know each other, but here come new blood from another person, from another direction, and it was really nice to be inspired in a new way. I think you made me much more brave, and I think I made you also a little bit brave.
Yeah.
So it was sort of a good combo.
It's also important to say that a collaboration like this can't come out of being just good friends. You can be friends with a lot of people, but to do something like this is actually, you could say, even more intimate than a friendship, because you go one step before something becomes an artwork. You look at each other's material. I think there's a word for this, hovedstol. I don't know, maybe that's the wrong word. But when you look at that material together, you open up for the other person in a very specific way. Mm-hmm. That's even beyond friendship. We could also not be friends, but if we had the interest and it would work, it would work. And as Karin said, she had images of very depressed people. I had images, I had been walking over the bridge called Dronning Louise Bridge here. And that has been a very popular bridge for people just to sit. And I always looked at these people walking over the bridge. So what I gave Karin was all these different people sitting on the bridge, standing on the bridge. And the painting here is an image that Karin had. That's not from the bridge.
So it's from a mental hospital.
It's from another kind of bridge. Yeah. And
No, it's interesting too, because you have this sort of melancholic figure that recurs throughout each of your practices, and I think also how you were just speaking of how important the exhibition was for you in your individual practices too. And you see this over the last 5 years of certain motifs that were discovered in Swan Song that do recur in each of your individual practices as well, when the shows have absolutely nothing to do with one another. It's almost like you've entered each other's psyche.
That's what I mean.
And you plan.
It's in a way beyond just being good friends.
Yeah.
There's also nothing polite when we do it. I look at Karin's material and I say, of course, you don't do this to friends.
But you have to be a thief if you want to be an artist.
I think it's true.
Yeah. But you must be a careful thief.
Yeah.
With friends you borrow.
Yeah.
With artists you steal.
Yeah.
But it has to do very much about, it sounds very boring, but it has very much to do with technical things and materials, and I think we are both very interested about different materials.
Yeah.
So, we can talk for a very, very long time about brushes and colors and wax and glue and canvases and
all of the things
and
that
different
make the
shops
album.
in Europe that you can buy them from.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. But what was interesting to me was looking through the images of the Swan Song exhibition are these sort of 3 moments of vanitas or memento mori, where you have the hunched over woman, which looks to me like Albrecht Dürer's Melancholia, this sort of the curse of the artist, or this myth of artistic genius that's also depression and a little bit of madness. So that for me is sort of this descent into the psyche, and then you have the swans, and swans are mute until they die and they sing the song, and that's the swan song is really an announcement of death. And then you have the skeletons, which are the comical decomposition of everything that has already died. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your relationship to death.
We're coming closer.
Yeah. I think we all came close this year. Yeah.
We're getting there. You want to start?
That's true.
As an artist, any kind of artist, you are always dealing with banality.
Yeah.
Why are you dealing with banality? Because banality makes people act. They don't want to admit it, but when you throw banality on the floor, it's like you're at a dinner table. You ask people, you want French fries? They say, no. You put it on the table, everybody eats.
Yeah.
So as an artist, you want to throw stuff in that people, they reach for. death is the most banal thing. Actually, it's actually almost stupid to do this as an artist. You have to do it. I think sometimes you talk more about death when you just paint, maybe the moon or maybe a swan. If you really try to, the closer you get, the further away you get. Because it's all about what you can imagine about death. But maybe it's like a door that should exist in every artwork. Just a hidden door. It's always there. And if you let the viewer walk around into the painting, sooner or later they're going to look at this door. Maybe this door is called beauty. And you open the door of beauty and it's death.
Surprise. No, we'll get into the idea of fantasies also.
This was very real. It was not a fantasy.
Yeah.
It was reality.
Yeah, I think about the birds in our summer house. Every year we come in there, it's the same birds. I think it's the same birds. They make the nests and they feed the children and they catching food for them and they're flying and I hear this special sound of the wings. But then if I'm thinking one step more, it's new birds, not every year, but many of them are new birds from the last year.
Right.
They're dying, but we don't see it when they're dying. And they do same things, and I think it's very much the same with us people. If we look back for 50 years, it was also people sitting in big groups and were interested about culture events and listening to music or walking around in museums to see art. And we are also a passenger in a time, and we are here for eating and fucking and consume different things and cry for loss we have. And I think for me it's been more and more clear for every day because many friends have bad sickness or dying or the parents be very old and dying.
Right.
So it's been more and more clear for everybody. And I'm soon 60, of course I'm thinking about the death almost every day. But I remember Astrid Lindgren, she called up her sister every morning and they start talking about the death. They say, we cannot talk about anything before we have talked about the death. And I can understand that more and more, because when I was young, the life was in front of me, but now it's the half of the life, more than half of the life is behind me. So of course I think about it every day, but it's not so depressing and scary anymore, but I think I have to handle it. It's about me now. It's not just about parents and grandparents. And it's coming through the art, of course.
It's interesting what you say about this imagined immortality of the birds. That because we see the motifs recur, we assume that they've never actually died because it's what's in front of us.
But what do you think the birds think? They think exactly the same. Oh, here are people all the time the same. I'm sure.
Yes, of course.
Oh, just another face. It's the same.
Another thing walking around on two legs.
Tragic if you're thinking that way. But it's true, I think.
Are we the birds? Yeah, good question.
But, it's interesting because I think most people know the feeling that you are either walking away from something or you're running from something. You can give it different names. You can say, oh, I'm walking away from the knowledge that I'm going to die or whatever, all these things. But basically, I've been thinking the last few months, what you do as an artist, no, not what you do, but what I do, and I think you do it as well, is you try to sit and look at the world. And you try to find new eyes for the world. And when this is possible, that you start looking at the world, you feel that you can actually see the world. For me, it only happens when I draw. Before this, I'm not really sure that I can see anything around me. I notice it, I understand it, I can maneuver, can walk, but the moment I start creating a language, my hands and my eyes, I start being able to see. And that's also something to do with the feeling of something following you.
Yeah.
It seems like in that moment, those two things can actually sit on the same chair.
Right.
And you know, we are almost same age, and we are of course all educated that time is something that goes like this. But you can, the great thing why to do art is that sometimes you can have a feeling that you can
Time travel.
Yeah, not time travel. That's actually, yeah, maybe it is that. But you know, the weird feeling of entering a room, meeting somebody on the street you haven't seen for a long time, and for a second, you know you are in the middle of the air. You're not here for a second. You are in that moment. Sometimes making art can be a little bit similar. You can walk in and out of your life. You can pass through. I think that is for me like really attractive.
Yeah.
I could see it when I installed the show at Louisiana, because we had select around 60 work for the show, and everything was from 2007 until today. The most of them. Some is a little bit older. And I think I had an idea that we should install them more chronicle. Start with the newest one and go back. And it is a little bit like that, but it was also very clear for me that it not has to do with a line as you talk about. It has much more to do with a sort of movement or a circle movement. And you're coming back to same well and take your water from that well for nature and that well for how it is to be a woman or a small girl or what it is. I mean, it's not about that, but you understand what I mean. So it was important to mix them, because they are not important at all to say they are done at the same time. It's much more the team who have been very important for me.
Yeah, and how it creates this sort of root system that comes back in a forward spiral.
It is. It's coming back more and more, and I can see that. And I remember for a long time ago, I was so fascinated of Peter Doyle, who can recycle very much of his motifs. Some very specific motifs he recycled again and again and again. Yeah. And it can be a quite long time loop between them. But I would say I'm not there, but I'm on the way on the same direction, because the last year I had, for example, the long painting I have here at the fair. It's a motif I worked with for more than 20 years ago. So it's quite interesting how it can be very important one more time.
Yeah.
But of course with new experience and new ideas, and yeah.
Right. And it's interesting also that you're both developing this language. It is a language of painting, but it's also a language of not images but thoughts that come through in this circular way. I was thinking about this one quote by Agamben this morning that I wanted to bring up, which is, "Painting is the making of mute poetry, where the silence and the word become visible." I'm wondering if you can talk about your approach to understanding the world also through painting, and do you hear sounds? Do you have essences of music? Is there a lyricality or a rhythm that you work with? Swan Song being the inspiration for that.
For me, and I have to repeat a little bit, I'm not going to say we, because it's going to be a boring talk then. So Karen can say hopefully the complete opposite afterwards. But for me, it's certain things that has actually nothing to do with art.
Yeah.
It's just you look at whatever you look at. And there's a reason why you look at this or you pick up certain things. That's something to do with your story. Doesn't mean you have a special story, it's just like anybody. You look at something and then you feel you can't do anything about it. You can't really touch it, you can't really see it. And then you start to try to develop some kind of language. I think for me, I think about Karin and also Peter Doig as much more image-driven. It's much more about these images. For me, it's much more about in a weird way, language, trying to say a tree, and then really trying to create almost language for this, even trying to draw and look so hard that even the idea of perspective disappears for me. You can't do it just as a style or as a decision. You really have to get to a point where, if it's the forest, it just becomes like almost language.
Yeah.
I don't know if this was fortune cookie talk, but I tried. Your turn.
But did I misunderstood you? But you asked about music and
Yeah,
sound.
I did.
Just talk about
I
what you
did.
like.
No. Tal did not answer the question. I did ask about
Cristello.
No.
I'm a very good school girl.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry.
I appreciate that. We'll come back to you.
Just hug me down.
Let us start talking about sound, because music is very important for me. And not just music, also noises. It's very, very unusual that I'm coming into my studio and start working without any sounds around me. Normally it's the radio on. And then I'd be very bored to hear the voices and I don't listen what they say, so I put on some music. And it's always a sort of kick for me to start working.
Yeah.
I mean, if I need a lot of energy, I can play Nirvana, for example, or Beck or something. And if I want to be more contemplative and find more, I can listen to Chopin or Bach or to more classic music. And Spotify have, of course, been very simple because I can find everything I want. I don't have to look at all my records and what happens here.
You're caught.
I don't know what happens.
You're in jail.
I'm trapped in myself here. Okay, I'm. Okay. So sound is very important.
Yeah.
Of course it is.
But even when you're looking at your images, and because of the Louisiana show where it's not chronological, you get the sense almost that you are like a classical composer, where a different musician will play the piece over and over again, but you're the painter. I don't know if that's too abstract, but it was what...
A little bit abstract.
I understand it.
Yeah.
What?
He understands.
I just want to give a little bit back because I didn't answer.
Thank you. I appreciate that. My next question is about fantasies. Yeah, which is in your works, because it is about the sort of banality of everyday life, or these images that one could see, for example, a forest or somebody in a park or swans in a lake. But the way that you depict it is not a way that anybody would be able to see it in reality. And I wonder if you have specific fantasies that you want from your viewers, or if some of those fantasies are new even to you once you've completed the painting.
I'm always working with a sort of fake film.
Yeah.
I think so.
Do you have like a narrative in your mind, the script?
Every time I work for a gallery show, I have my synopsis with a lot of inspiration materials, and they're coming from very different places, and I put them on the floor, and it's a little bit like sets for a film. So I make a sort of storyboard.
Yeah, but the narrative is never written.
It sounds crazy because I'm never following this, but it's a sort of start point, because then after a time when I start working with the paintings, the story is something else, and it can go to absolutely another direction. But I'm open for it. But it's more like when you're a kid and you start playing with Barbies, or I don't know. I remember when I was a kid, I always had a sort of start story, but then it freaks out and be something else. It's that I'm seeking for, to be open for, surprise myself with something.
Yeah. Are they genres of films that you work with a lot? Like
what?
Genres of films? Like, would you say it's horror
no,
or romance?
Horror. I'm very uninterested. No, it has more to do with relationship, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a relationship between
The
two
most
people.
scary thing is what happens today in the world. I
Yes.
think.
Yeah.
It's also very inspiring and scary.
Yeah. Do you have a relationship with cinema in the same way? Keyword cinema.
No, not the same. I'm not that image driven.
Yeah.
It's more like I work in these families at work, and there are certain questions, there's a certain feeling of not being able to touch, not being able to talk, and then in that kind of context create language. And it changes.
So maybe you're almost writing a book and Mama's almost making a film. In two removed ways, but you're closer to writing and closer to the camera. It makes sense with this idea that you're not as close to the image.
Yeah, I mean, it changed because before I was more close to the image. It was always about finding images, but now it's much more about looking at things that happens now.
Mm-hmm.
I can feel that with you, that you have started working with ways with flowers and more reality things, and
Yeah, of course.
more like still life. Or
Yeah, it's like there is a certain moment where you look at something that is there in that moment,
Mm-hmm.
and that you work with that kind of relationship to that new world of reality out there.
Yeah.
And the world is quiet. The world is mute. It doesn't talk to you. You don't know. God has always been quiet as long as we've been here. So you try, to kind of deal with that kind of quietness.
I think maybe you have a different viewpoint on this. Do you think that the world is quiet or that nature's very loud? I don't think that there's quiet too. Well, maybe this is a different
it
perspective.
depends on how much news you want to take in.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you have to turn off everything.
Yeah. But
Because
even
it's
if you're
very
like
loud.
seeing-
I think
Yeah.
everything is very loud, and it's knocking every day to give me information about things I don't want to know about.
Yeah. Also, this idea that nature is quiet. Do you think nature is quiet too? Like in a
No,
forest?
in a way, you're right. Of course, nature is not quiet, and if I take a walk there, but if I really want to see whatever nature, a walk in a park, if I really want to see it, if I want to see the birds,
You
if I
tune
want-
out.
Yeah, it's something. If I want to make an image myself,
Yeah.
that's where I say the world is quiet until it becomes possible to make a drawing of it.
Mm.
Until you create that kind of bridge, the world is quiet.
Yeah.
And you are very alone. You are alone, and then you look at all this, and then you find a tool to reach out.
Yeah.
You make an artwork, and it's not yours anymore. It can create that bridge. Hopefully, when people go to see Karin's show, you look at this painting and you feel this painting belongs to you. It's not Karin's anymore.
No.
It's nobody's. It's just there for you to create a bridge between that before is different than now.
Yeah. No, I agree with that idea of looking where it now is the viewer's fantasy, whatever they're bringing.
But fantasy, why I can't completely take that word, because I don't think, if I go and look at Karin's work, I don't want to go out of that with a fantasy, like, oh, that's a weird situation, what happened there? I want to get hit by what I see in a different way. I want to get shocked by it and disturbed. And when I leave the show, I have to stand up because I don't know how to say this in English. When I look at Karin's work, I want to walk like this afterwards. Like, my leg is not quite working. If I walk away
Just
with
the
a
left. Just the left one.
If it's just a fantasy, I feel I'm just another selfish person.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very serious.
I understand that. Yeah. So maybe we can talk about the next project that you're doing together.
We don't know what it is.
We know a little bit.
Yeah.
I know a little
Yeah,
bit.
we know a little bit.
We put, this time we don't put motives, our motives between us. we put somebody else between us that we both admire deeply.
I think we all love, and we're allowed to say also. So it's Carl
It's
Frederick.
Yeah, Carl Frederick Hill. Yeah. And for me, he have been very important for a very long time, but in two different periods. Because if you know who Carl Frederick Hill is, you know it's two artists in the same person. Because he's starting like a very classic painter. He disappeared from Sweden and came to France, and he wanted to be like Corot, and he was making very realistic landscape outside, and for me he was my entrance to making landscape when I was really young, and I tried. My wish was to paint as good as Carl Frederick Hill. I went to Gotland and to Denmark too, in the spring and in the fall, and but then Carl Fredrik be very mental bad, and he got his cycles, and his family helped him back to Lund, and he lived there for a very long time together with his mother and one of his sisters.
Yeah. In a mental asylum.
Yeah, they took care of him, and sometimes I say when it's too many things to disturb me, like you have to check your car or pay rents and buying foods and cleaning windows and all this shit we have to do as human beings. I sometimes say, lucky Carl Fredrik Hill, he never had to do anything about that.
Yeah.
Other people served him, he could just sitting there and drawing.
Yeah.
But of course it's a joke, he had a very, very sad life. But he became to be a very expressive and fantastic artist under that period. Yeah. And he had so short way to have contact with his inner spirits and ghosts. Yeah. And he could describe things nobody can do, I think. So of course he's a big inspirer and big inspiration for both of us. Yeah. And for 2 months ago, we went to Malmö Konstmuseum together, and we saw a small part of the collection they had. They have the biggest collection in the world, many, many thousands of drawings and paintings. And I mean, we looked at maybe 200.
Yeah.
And almost everything was super great.
Yeah, and there are thousands. I was lucky to go see it as well in the archives.
And I mean, we don't want to take him to other artists. Many people always have been inspired of him. For example, Lars Norén, the Swedish writer, one of his first famous poetry he wrote was about Carl Fredrik Hill. Yeah. And also a company in Stockholm, they stole his name and they called themselves CF Hill. No. I don't like that, but I mean, so many people want to be a part of him. Right. But I think for us it's much more or less.
We went to Malmö and we looked at these drawings, and you look at a drawing that is how old?
More than 100 years.
Yeah. And it's 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
That's actually the great thing about art. Again, we started this conversation talking about time. You can look at a great artwork, and then it's like falling, and you feel it's just 5 minutes ago. Yeah. This guy just left the room. Yeah. And when it is like that, it's also possible to walk in there. How we are going to do this, I mean, we don't want to fake it. We actually don't know.
Yeah.
But we must find out. One thing, it was your idea from the beginning. You said we should make a show around Carl Fredrik Hill.
Around Hill. Yeah. Around the little hill of Hill.
And then we are free to do what we want.
Right.
Again, you know, where do you enter an artist like this? Do you start reading about his life? I mean, some artists would do this. For me, it's like really looking where there is a natural door. Yeah. Like a door where I can go in there. Yeah. I can go in, and then you enter that room, and you have a conversation. That's out of time. You have a conversation about a tree that bends like this. What's great about Hill is that he would draw a tree, and you understand. Okay, he did a tree, and the tree is a bit bended. But actually it's almost something else.
Yeah.
It's speaking about, it's more maybe more a painting like this.
Yeah. I know, the slideshow is not working, but it
But
is.
that's lucky for us.
Whatever.
Just think of
It
it as
doesn't
your
matter.
love.
There was a tree. I had an image of the woman and the tree and
Yeah.
yeah. It was going to be really impressive, but the time has passed.
Did you say we have not been impressive?
No. We're so impressive. So yeah, but Carl Friedrich Hill, born 1849, died 1911, and it's like everything that we see is so immediate and perfect in all of his sketches of nature. And I think it's also important to know that he was working during high romanticism, of when symbolism and romanticism, everyone was trying to portray nature as a way of speaking to them, like this idea of man versus nature. But I think Carl Friedrich Hill is the only one where we see man versus nature and nature one.
Yeah.
It's just like in his mind, completely ravaged by the beauty of, but also the madness of the way that the world works. They're chaotic and perfect.
But it's also interesting to see when he's sick that he's very inspired of other artists and also vad heter uppslagsböcker, alltså dictionaries with pictures. And he saw waterfalls from Africa, the Victoria Falls, and he made an own fantasy about that. And it could also be in Istanbul, the water systems. Maybe some of you have been there, and he had, of course, never been there.
No.
But he made a sort of idea about it.
But maybe he's been there more than even us.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe. Yeah.
Are we the birds?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are the birds.